Hi everyone, and welcome to our first Sage Intacct function focus webinar. This webinar will show you project accounting in Sage Intacct. For those I have met before, my name is Laura Lee and I am the account manager for Sage Intacct UKI customers. I work alongside your customer success managers with my role focusing mainly on commercials, licenses and functionality. I'll be presenting today alongside Rick Sharp, our solution consultant who specialises in projects. We'll have time for Q&A at the end. Please feel free to enter questions as you go in the question box and we'll answer them at the end of the session. If you use the chat questions box, not the chat box, that will allow us to follow up after the session if we don't get around to everybody's questions. Please also look out for the survey at the very end where you can request follow-ups and give us feedback. Many of you on the call today have been with Sage Intacct since 2019, our first year in the UK. And from speaking to you in our check-ins and account reviews, I regularly hear how you're benefiting from increased efficiencies from the automation and streamlined processes that you get simply from the core finance module. And you tell me that you're excited to look at what else Sage Intacct has to offer now that your processes are becoming more embedded and your finance users are more proficient. Today, we're going to talk you through how businesses, primarily but not restricted to service-based organisations, can take advantage of a solution that allows you to add on varying levels of project accounting and use it in ways that would show value, outcomes that have clear, measurable results. One of Sage Intacct's customers is a recruitment company who's now cut payroll time by 90%. They found that by adding in Intacct projects, this allowed them to adjust how they charge for their projects, helping them discover hidden profit and take control. Tandem HR reduced their monthly close, saved hours, and increased EBITDA nearly 200%. These are challenges customers have told us about their financial operations. Manual, error-prone processes using outdated systems and Excel, increasing volume of projects and project types, complex billing, clients want their invoicing done differently, multi-entity consolidation, and lack of visibility. They can't provide profitability reports by project and client types. Have a think about which ones you're trying to scale, and do you feel like you'd need to increase your headcount to facilitate this? Sage Intacct streamlines and automates the project lifecycle across both finance and sales, from helping you sell the work to winning the business, doing the work, and handling your billing and accounting. As projects are in flight, easy to use time and expense capabilities make it straightforward for your project delivery staff to enter data that will help drive downstream costing and billing. Project managers can easily manage schedules and assign resources as the project needs dictate. And billing the client is no longer a chore. Time and expenses flow to the invoice. Multiple billing types allow you the flexibility to bill fixed price, time and materials, and other methods to meet your needs. And you can separate your revenue recognition from invoicing to provide you the controls you need. When it comes to project billing, we know it can be complex. So think about how complex is your billing? How many people are involved? How much manual input is required? Think about your customer billing process. Do you sell subscriptions with your services? Do you sell a lot of add-ons? If not, do you plan to? Do you recognise revenue on a different schedule to billing? Is it based on percent complete or milestones? Do you have multiple fixed price methods such as percent complete, completed contract or reoccurring? These are all indications that Sage Intacct Projects module is going to help you become more in control, saving time and lost revenue. We've helped firms overcome their business challenges, especially when they're trying to grow and scale. What these customers had in common was the fact they were noticing larger transaction volumes as they were growing, which also meant more touches for finance, more contracts, more time and expense reports, and more approvals. There are multiple sources of project costs. Billable resources enter timesheets and submit expenses. Project managers are approving timesheets and expenses and handling change orders. And media buyers are doing insertion orders and purchasing media for campaigns. All of these costs need to get captured to bill the client correctly. And if processes are manual, where timesheets aren't always submitted on time or insertion orders aren't being entered correctly, then finance can't support the business when it's growing. With Sage Intacct Projects, you have the insight to answer the bigger questions. Customers that have come to us want to know exactly what is their profitability for the overall business and for different types of services they're delivering. They want to know, and they're able to answer, what exactly is our cost structure? And is it going to support the top line growth that we want to achieve? And what are we going to do to need to ask for funding in order to grow the business? What are the solutions that are really profitable, and how can we manage our expenses and spending for the long term? And so by doing all of this through automation, you can see that your organization will have the time and the data to get insight to the bigger questions. Sage Intacct is the financial foundation. The entire project lifecycle is now within a single system for both finance and project teams. With a single source of truth, actionable insights are available for every role tailored to their business needs. Whether it's project managers that need to keep projects within budgets, executives that want to understand which projects are contributing most to overall profitability, or finance staff that need to track how collections are trending, Intacct puts these insights at the fingertips. All the roles in the organisation, from the CFO to the VP and the staff, can have their own configurable dashboards, giving them the information that they need to make informed business decisions. And our customers appreciate not only having these types of insight, but the fact that everyone is on the same page. So the focus is on making the right decision, not arguing over the numbers. Keep track of the day-to-day with real-time financials, insight into the details behind them. And here's how Sage Intacct, your best-in-class financial foundation with projects, can work for you. We have core finance and projects capabilities. If you need something more complex, you can look to our partner base for those more niche capabilities. Here's just a few sample partners in mobile time and expense, CRM, and advanced project and resource management. Whether you're using partner solutions today or will in the future, Intacct offers lots of integration sources to support your growth, and as your project complexities increase, we provide an integrated experience with an open system architecture so you can integrate with a more specialized third-party system. In a moment, Rick will show you how the different layers of Sage Intacct project accounting works, and he'll walk you through the different modules. But here's a high-level overview. Project tracking module allows you to view profit by project, tagging purchases, sales, and journals so that you can link both cost and revenue to projects and report on them. Project costing module, you can track all costs to projects for real-time visibility. Project billing allows you to run billing reports to get visibility of your unbilled and pending billed costs. Revenue management, when paired with projects, allows you to automate your revenue recognition by project phase using milestones, schedules, percentage completion, and project completion methods. And with resource management added on, you can manage your resources effectively to ensure successful projects, create tasks and milestones per project, budget hours, and monitor progress. It allows you to identify the right resource based on skills and/or availability, assign individuals or placeholder resources to streamline resource forecasting. We're going to move over to Rick's demo now. So as I mentioned, we will have time for Q&A at the end. So please continue entering your questions in the question box as we go, and we'll answer them after the demo.
Today I'm going to be taking you through Sage Intacct's project tracking module. We understand businesses struggle with a number of problems, such as needing to extract data, combine and manipulate it to analyse project information. With Sage Intacct we can solve these problems, saving time on project analysis and providing live reporting that you can interrogate on the fly. Let's take a look. With Sage Intacct's project tracking module, you can define projects with their IDs, and we can name them. We can break them into different types, and these are user definable to suit your interests and your needs, as well as to define perhaps a customer that a project relates to, when a project will start and finish, if it's in a hierarchy, which parent it belongs to, The stage it has got to, again, user definable list that we can use to break our reporting into different areas, as well as identify the people who are involved with the project manager, the salesperson, the customer, and other information such as how far the project has progressed as a percentage on a particular date, as well as information about customer contacts, billing agreements, and other dimensions. The projects can also not only be in a hierarchy, but we can define project groups that again we can use in reporting and dashboards. So here, for example, I've defined a group that brings together two different project types, education projects and environment, and I can use that in reporting and dashboards. And then we can use our project dimension on financial transactions. That could be in accounts payable, against purchase orders, accounts receivable, sales orders, and general ledger journals. Let's have a look at an example of that I've saved a bookmark to. So here I've got a journal that breaks down some costs across three different projects from a non-dimensional value that originally had been input into the system. And I can take that and then use that financially captured information in reports and dashboards. Let's have a look at a dashboard so you can see the effect of the capture of the project detail. So on this controller dashboard, I have a profit and loss report that is breaking the information down into the projects that are defined and potentially some non-project work. I can use the project dimension as one of my dashboard filters, and I can use the group that we set up earlier. So I could just look at education and environment projects, and then the reports are now filtering just to those values, and any information on the dashboard that's shown in blue is something that I can drill through to. So for example, I can drill through to this license cost, to the journal, and then into the specific journal we were looking at a moment ago to see all of that detail from summary down to the entering transaction. If you extend project tracking, you can add the time and expense module to this. When you do that with, say, expenses, you can capture further information, further costs into your reports that are, say, coming from employee expenses that will then affect your profit and loss reporting. As shown here, I've got an expense that's going through to the education project we've just been looking at. With timesheets, we can again capture information about the number of hours we're consuming against a particular project. We're capturing the number of hours on a particular project, but we're not valuing that time. If you need your timesheet costs to flow through in the system, you'd need Intacct's project costing module, which adds in detail like the hourly rates by employees and allows us to define projects to a task level. Look out for a video on project costing if that is of interest. So now you've seen how with Intacct's project tracking module, you can save time on project analysis, you can use projects and project groups as live filters in your dashboards, and you've seen how we can slice and dice project reporting using the new dimension. Now let's look at Intacct's project costing module. We understand businesses struggle with a number of problems in this area, often having data held outside of their finance system, perhaps in payroll or project planning systems. This then needs you to extract and compile information before you can produce reports, leading to delays. With Intacct, our solution gives you a centralized system where finance is the primary data source and this enables real-time reporting. Let's take a look. So in Intacct, when you turn on the project costing module or elements above it, effectively you're turning the whole project module on. Just certain elements are extensions to this base module. If you add on billing or resource management, for example, which we'll cover in later videos. This is quite different from project tracking, which really just enables projects as a general ledger dimension. So with project costing, you get the full projects menu available to you, and when you look at the detail of a project, you'll see many more tabs of information than you do with the tracking system. It includes the ability to define tasks underneath projects, which is an addition. And also at the project level, we're now starting to add more detailed rules so we can determine and control which users can book time to projects and to tasks. And we also have the ability to create transaction rules, rather like transaction definitions elsewhere in the system. These allow us to define how the general ledger is going to be affected by postings into the project module, perhaps adding up all the costs against the employees based on the hours they've inputted, and then adding on, say, overhead and general and admin charges. You can now assign employees to the project and then later to the tasks themselves, so you can control who can book time to a project. You'll see elements here that really relate more to billing. As I say, this is a configuration switch for this module, turning the extension to billing on, but the fields are visible even if you haven't enabled it. So we can determine who's working on a project, but probably most importantly with costing, we start to now get visibility into the numbers. We can set budgeted amounts for billing, for cost, for hours, and the system will bring through totals, running totals over time, as to what we have manually billed, what costs we've incurred against the project, and how many hours have been booked. And if you need to go into further levels of detail, a greater amount of breakdown, you can set that up using a general ledger budget and then mapping the project into that and reporting against it. Now with tasks available with costing, we can break a project into further levels of detail. We can identify dependencies potentially between tasks. We can add things like, say, work breakdown structure coding, planned and estimated duration of each task, as well as identifying the employees that will work on a task and potentially a greater level of detail in terms of estimated or planned hours, as well as actual hours captured through timesheets. The project costing module also introduces a project Gantt chart capability, as shown here, breaking a project down into tasks and then people, and we can see the progress of those tasks against the estimates. These charts can be adapted to use different colors and show different levels of detail in their configuration. The project costing system introduces settings for timesheets which allow you to specify details like whether timesheets are going to be daily, weekly, monthly, whether you will require notes, what the approval processes are going to be for timesheets. So timesheets approval is a new introduction. And as you'll just see as I'm coming up to on the screen, as I say, project billing is really a configuration switch. It introduces a module charge if you want to include billing, and the same thing for resource management, which is why you'll see many of the elements on screens that relate to these options once you've introduced costing if you don't deploy this additional functionality. So the introduction of the project costing module allows you to gather costs that are coming in under your projects, to report on them in real time in dashboards, so that you can see, for example, the number of hours that are booked to a particular project. Again, we can drill through that to see the detail, go through the report to the transaction underneath it, in this case to a journal, because this is being triggered by the timesheet. And again, we can go down to the bottom level and actually see the original transaction. So here I've got a number of hours being booked against this particular project by Nikki Tesla across a week, and that's showing in my top level numbers on my dashboard. So now you've seen how with Intacct's project costing module, Intacct can provide a centralized system for all your key financial information. Your finance system can become your primary data source, and from here you've got real-time reporting capability to understand how your projects are performing against estimates and budgets. Now let's look at the project billing elements of Intacct's project costing and billing module. We understand businesses struggle with a number of problems today, such as having a lack of visibility in the finance team on billing triggers, manually driven invoicing being created, and a disconnection between project teams and finance. With Intacct's project billing capability, you can see the triggers and events that are defined for billing. We can automate invoice creation, and there is a connection between the project team and finance within the system. Let's take a look. So with Intacct's project billing system switched on, within the project we can now determine the type of billing that will be used on a project, whether it's going to be time material, whether it will be fixed fee or fixed fee with expenses being charged, with switches allowing you to control whether we're going to bill for expenses and for third-party costs. Within the pricing tab, we can now set up individual billing rates by employee or by item for the type of work delivered, and use that in the automated billing system. We can also set up markups if we need them on expenses, or potentially on third-party costs. With fee-based projects, we can determine that certain tasks are milestones. Within the task definition, we can determine if tasks are milestones and if they're utilised, and then we can use those elements in the sales order definition. Sales order lines can be linked to a project and a task, and then use a billing template to define how the item will be billed based on the progress of the project. In this case, we've got a milestone task, and once it's marked as 100% complete through project manager entry, then the system will bill the fee for this stage. So let's generate all the entries that need to be billed for one of my larger time materials projects. And now you can see that Intacct has reviewed all the timesheets that need to go on an invoice, any expense claims that need to be included on the next invoice run, any third-party costs, and it will also review anything that's being charged to the project that's coming through from purchasing, from order entry, or from general ledger journals that are marked as billable. So now you've seen how with Intacct's project billing capability, you can define triggers and events in the system. You can automate billing so that different billing elements are gathered across the system to create invoices in a simple fashion. And all this data allows us to connect between our project team and the entries they make against projects through timesheets and say purchasing costs, and the finance team who are often responsible for the invoicing. Now let's look at Intacct's revenue management module in relation to projects. We understand businesses struggle with a number of problems in this area without a specialist financial solution. For revenue management, often the evidence for the revenue calculation is held outside of finance. And also, revenue calculations can be manual and then have to be posted separately into the system. With Intacct, recognition rules are defined and controlled within the finance system, and revenue calculations are automated, and posting can be automatic as well if required. Let's take a look. So Intacct provides the facility to define a number of different recognition templates that can be allocated against projects where we need to account for billing being on a different principle from the internal revenue recognition method. You can see I've got rules that are defined for milestone attainment and equally for percentage completion. Revenue recognition templates can be configured to work either from a percent complete basis, and if percent complete, then we can recognize it based on the progress of the project or individually by task. And we can calculate the level based on the estimated hours, the planned hours, the budgeted hours, or the budgeted cost, or an observed percentage complete filled in normally by the projects team. And then that can post automatically into finance, or it can be run as a manual process. The percentage complete that is going to be used could be simply 100%, or we could break it down into 10% or 25% levels, or whatever was needed. Equally, the system can recognize based on a milestone, and when using milestones, the calculation is based on either the estimated hours, the planned hours, or the percentage complete against the task. So what you've seen is how with Sage Intacct, recognition rules can be defined and controlled in the system. Revenue calculation is automated based on the data held on the projects or the tasks, and posting can be manual or can happen completely automatically. Now let's look at Intacct's resource management module. We understand businesses struggle with a number of issues in this area. Typically, as teams grow, you lose knowledge of your team's capability and their availability for new projects. You need also to improve on your team utilization and to manage that and improve your revenue per head. With Intacct, you have skills and schedules available to you in real time. You can therefore improve your utilization management, being aware of which members are on the bench or underutilized, and you can use the real-time reporting in Intacct to assist you to that end. Let's take a look. So let's take a look at the availability of the employees working for Tom Klein in December. From the results returned, we can see that Chuck Darwin is fully booked in the first week and he's overbooked in the second week. And most of the rest of the team are over their target utilization. So having seen I've got a problem with Chuck, let me review all the different projects that he's on and look to see which of these I could perhaps allocate to somebody else. So having looked at the detail of Chuck's capacity and where he's been overbooked, I can now drill into the task that's causing that, and it's these 20 hours that Chuck is booked onto this project between the 9th and the 13th. So I could search for an alternative for Chuck on this project. So let's say what I need is somebody who is a consultant that speaks Spanish, that's available in December, and the system's coming back and telling me that Nikki does have availability for about a week's worth of work in December, and I could then select Nikki and apply her to that task, and then I could adjust the hours for a precise match and remove the booking for Chuck. The resource search capability is using a defined set of skills, certificates, and positional information that's stored against the employee record within projects. So now you've seen with Intacct's resource management system how you can maintain details of skills and availability of your staff and search against that in real time. Through this, you can improve your utilization management and use the real-time reporting to ensure you get the most from your team.
Thank you, Rick. Okay, so we're going to open up for some question and answers. I believe a few people have had audio issues, so I hope the majority of people have been able to hear that okay. We will be sharing the recording in the community following the session as well. So Rick, over to you. I think we might have a few questions in the question box.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Laura. Certainly one of the questions that came in was around using the project dimension as a filter on dashboards. That does work. The problem potentially is that some of the standard reports will sort of be at header level or summary level, whereas the project is identified in the detail level. So, for example, accounts payable reports that aren't using the detail information won't have the project data because we don't tie people into only having one project on say an accounts payable invoice. It could be different line by line. So if you use a report that's constructed with the right data source, it will allow you to filter by projects. Couple of other things that people have spotted that are quite common in this, I think, is that you can add resource detailing to a project without the resource management module. You just can't search for people because you won't be tracking their availability or capability without that module, but you can assign them to projects and tasks without that extra piece. There was also a question about sort of how far you can go with projects and time and expenses, as I was showing earlier. Time and expenses until you get to project costing is primarily about expenses. You can capture timesheets, but you're short of the approval routines and the postings into finance that you get with costing. So new questions that are just coming in about, are hours uploadable? Yes, they are, and that's one of the reasons that some people will use time and expense with projects, because it gives a routine for timesheets. But I'd really again suggest that probably you want costing for that timesheet to be useful, and to be something that can be approved and checked. And they can come in effectively through an import routine or through an API call. So a couple of people asking about that. I think those are the prime questions I've spotted. But if there's anything else that anybody's got while we've got time. Just a new question coming in. Sorry, let me read that. So there's a question coming from Philip about if hours are being uploaded to create costing, can they create a journal? That would happen. With project costing, you can define rules against the project that will determine the financial posting. So as timesheets come in, they can simply go through at cost, or cost plus overhead, cost plus burden, and other criteria. If you wanted potentially to use, you wanted to sort of split admin time across multiple projects through a single timesheet entry, then probably you could consider the dynamic allocations module and build up dynamic allocation rules to do that. Hopefully that makes some sense, but if not, maybe through Laura we can organise looking at that in more detail.
Thanks, Rick. Yeah, that seems to be all the questions. I'll just give you a bit of a follow-up here, and if any other questions come through, we'll answer them. So just in terms of being able to have some contact after this, there will be a survey at the end where you can request specific information or request a follow-up. We would be able to get you in for a demonstration, most likely with Rick, but depending on resource, it might be another solution consultant, but we'll certainly be able to go through your particular business requirements and of course get some costings as well. So if anybody wants that, they can reach straight out or use the survey. And I think that is it then. I can't see any more questions. Rick, can you?
No, I think those were the main areas that we've got so far.
Brilliant. Okay, well, I'll give everybody some time back, but thank you for joining. There will be a recording available for anyone who wasn't able to attend the webinar, and we will be posting this in the community and sharing the link for that as well. But you can always reach straight out to myself, or as I mentioned, use the survey to arrange for some contact. Well, thank you for joining, everybody, and look forward to seeing you on another Function Focus webinar next month. Thank you.
Thank you.